Last time on Chewonit.
Social media is designed to serve your ego. Then you get sucked into it because that's how the dopamine effect works, to make you feel shock.
Hey, what's up? My name is Xuan.
Hi, I'm Angie.
And welcome back to the Chewonit podcast, where we delve into the mental health issues faced among youths today.
This is a production of Brahm Centre, a charity in Singapore promoting happier and healthier living.
And to promote happier and healthier living, all right, to do so, of course, we have to talk about stress. And
Absolutely.
anxiety and all the annoying stuff that many of us youngsters face today. So let's kick off by talking a bit about stress and anxiety. Angie, all of us experience stress in life, right? But how do we know when it's starting to move into the territory of anxiety? Because stress is like something everyone faces. Anxiety is not.
Well, feeling stressed out from time to time, it's normal. And in fact, that kind of boosts your energy level up and enables you to perform at a peak level.
Mm-hmm.
So stress is not all bad. It is only bad when the stress overcomes you to the point that you can no longer perform.
And is that anxiety?
That's not anxiety. Anxiety is a sense of nervousness,
Okay.
a sense of inadequacy and lacking in confidence about the future.
Right.
So anxiety is very much future focused. But if you have, for example, exams coming out and you feel a bit stressed, and therefore, it helps to keep you awake, boost some energy in your brain and your body and enables you to study harder and better, that's actually a good thing. Yeah.
Okay.
But when stress gets to a level that you can't concentrate, you can't sleep well, and you're feeling tired, then it's gone into the negative side.
And can that lead to anxiety in a person?
It can, because you're also causing your body to not get enough rest to recharge, and then your mind can get a bit wonky. And then your mind starts to worry about, oh my gosh, I might fail my exam because I just can't focus, I can't concentrate, and and I'm going to fail.
Yeah. And I'm sure not just anxiety, right? Stress can also lead to many other problems, depression.
So
suicide.
usually anxiety happens before depression.
Right.
So if we can do intervention or address the anxiety, then we are able to prevent depression from setting in.
Okay, we've got an upcoming episode on depression, but I just want to quickly talk about how does anxiety lead to depression?
Well, anxiety, it's caused by, over a load of adrenaline and cortisol in the body, and it can actually cause the body to seize up. So having gone through this myself, I'm happy to describe that when I experienced anxiety to the point I had panic attacks, I had difficulty breathing. And I actually went to the doctor and said, could you help me get a chest x-ray? Because, I thought maybe my lungs were
And it could be a
had
sign
a
of like
problem
a
or
heart
had-
attack or something, right?
had cancer.
Yeah.
So fortunately, the x-ray came back and was all clear.
Okay.
And I still didn't know it was an anxiety attack. Then I had pain in my chest, especially I felt it on my left side. Or really maybe my brain was imagining.
Yeah.
And so I went for my heart checked and there was nothing wrong with it. So finally, a doctor said to me, hey, I give you this pill. It's muscle relaxant. See whether there's any effect. I took the muscle relaxant pill and in about 15 minutes,
You felt
I
better?
could breathe.
Wow.
It's like, oh my gosh, my lungs had cleared up. And then my doctor said to me, you've been suffering from anxiety attacks.
Because your muscles were tense, is it?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And that was before I founded Brahm Centre. And because I discovered these, that I realized that how little we knew about mental health and anxiety and panic attacks. And I'm considered a pretty educated person.
Yeah.
So what about a lot more people who are not as educated?
They wouldn't know about all this.
Yeah. So fortunately, this has been 12 years and a lot has changed.
Yeah.
And people are now more open to talking about anxiety.
And it's wonderful. Actually, I can relate to you because a lot of the anxiety I experience personally as well comes from my conditioning, right? Whether it's something from young, school, or the environment I was in, growing up, the army. Must anxiety always start with an unpleasant incident in our lives, or could it be something that we're already born with? or even something that manifests when we get older, in your case?
I don't believe that we're born with a predisposition to being anxious, but upbringing does have an effect.
Okay.
So if we are surrounded by adults who are constantly causing us to doubt ourselves or to make us feel like we're just not good enough, and regularly being critical towards us in terms of whatever we do, whatever achievements is never good enough, that could bring about anxiety. Yeah. So it's really important that as a youth, you hang out with people who are more positive and encouraging of each other.
Even friends.
Yes.
You don't want to hang around those, those negative people, those whiners, those, complainers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And who criticizes you or pick on you. Please.
Just
you
run
have a lot
far.
of options.
Run far away.
Yeah. Go find a new set of friends.
Some of us, myself included, stress about what the stress we're facing can do to our health. So it's this never ending cycle, right? We're worried about stress that we face, and then we're worried about, we're already worried about something, and then we're worried about that worrying.
Yeah. So worrying can become a mental habit. So the more you do it, the more the mind gets into this cycle of worrying.
Yeah.
Yes. And it also learns how to catastrophize. That means think of the worst scenario.
Yeah.
Or think of more possible negative scenarios. And then it perpetuates. So that's why mindfulness is very powerful for us to be aware, first of all, and to learn how to quit this habit.
Right. Okay. I think that's great advice for whoever's listening in. And I think, if you yourself, you're facing stress or anxiety, you can go and check out this really great TED Talk on YouTube by a psychologist. Her name is Kelly McGonigal. She talks about how, we always view stress as something bad for you. But new research is actually showing that, how stress may only be bad for you, right? If you believe that to be the case. In other words, stress will not harm your body if you view that stress as something positive. For instance, if a sign that your body is energized, right? And preparing you to take on a challenge.
I think there are two types of stress. One is episodal.
Okay.
Which means that you feel a bit stressed because now you have to go and do a presentation, or you need to prepare something you don't have a lot of time, but you need to get it done. So your body kind of boosts up its energy level with this adrenaline pumping.
So that one is good.
That's episodal stress.
Okay.
And then once you get it done, it's over. The stress is no longer present. Your body normalizes. But it's chronic stress that is actually harmful to the body.
Okay.
Because your mind perpetuates it. Yeah. And it can be nothing's happening, but your mind thinks about, oh my gosh, am I going to succeed in life? Will I get into this university?
Yeah.
Will I get my promotion? What if I don't get my promotion? What if my friends get ahead of me? Wow, all these thinking, this form of worrying and catastrophizing causes chronic stress. That means prolonged stress that's being experienced by the body. And that prolonged stress causes a chemical imbalance, that you have too much cortisol and adrenaline pumping in your body all the time. And that is harmful.
How then do we convert that chronic stress into just episodic stress?
Stop the mind from ruminating and creating these negative stories. So once you notice it, like whenever I notice a thought comes up which is not very empowering, can even be saddening, I'll take a deep breath. And I use the phrase, may I be well and happy. And that immediately stops the mind at its tracks from ruminating on that thought.
Another thing that I saw on Instagram, another really helpful thing that I find personally is that when you're able, or rather when you're stressed or when you're anxious, to find something that you're grateful for.
Yeah,
because
gratitude.
your mind can handle both gratitude and anxiety.
Gratitude is a fantastic antidote. And some people actually keep a jar of gratitude strips. So every day they write something that they're grateful for and they put it into the jar.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I might try it someday.
Yeah. And then when you're feeling down,
yeah.
you go and pull one of the strips out and read it. So your mind is reminded that, hey, you got this to be grateful for. And then you switch your mind into a gratitude mode.
I saw this Instagram story by someone I follow on Instagram. Triggered me a little bit when I was preparing for this episode. It says how mental health, or rather, mental health issues and mental illness, right, is a rich person's disease, quoted by this influencer that I follow. What do you think about that?
I think it's probably inaccurate because anyone could suffer from depression because whether you're poor or rich, when you feel a sense of hopelessness or helplessness, it could set you off on the path of depression.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's triggered by illness, like if you feel that you are being diagnosed with a disease that you feel there is not much of a hope or recovery, that could already set you off into depression.
Right. How about anxiety though? Is that a rich person's disease?
I would say that whoever has a sense of they have a lot to lose, that would usually set them up to have more anxiety.
Now, when I was doing research for this episode, really interesting. It says how COVID and the pandemic, right, has worsened this issue of health anxiety, right, which was something we talked about a little bit earlier, right? Health anxiety, by the way, is basically overthinking, right, and worrying that you may be having or you may be developing a serious illness, right? And with COVID, people with health anxiety, when they get like, a slight cough or a sore throat or a headache, they constantly worry or fear that, it's COVID. And then they start Googling all their symptoms and all that. Do you think this problem is going to resolve, right, even after COVID ends?
I think it's important we talk about mortality, to talk about death.
Okay.
Because once we
I mean, it's not something I want to talk about, but...
Yeah, but the reality is once we're conceived in our mother's womb, we all have an expiry date.
It's true.
Some of us expire even earlier, even before the baby's born. Some expire after they're born. If you go to children's hospital, there are kids there who have been diagnosed with terminal illnesses. They're not even going to see their next birthday. But because we don't talk about it, we pretend it doesn't exist because it's not in our family. But the reality is we all have an expiry date.
Right.
And if we respect that we all have an expiry date, then we would live our life
more fuller.
Treasuring. Yes, and treasuring every day that we have.
Yeah.
Instead
because
of
right now
fearing.
Yeah, and right now we're just like living in the future, right? We're
or fearing we don't have a future. But what's the point of worrying about whether we have a future when we don't even live today?
Yeah.
And we don't live it well. We live it worrying. We live it arguing. We live it imagining what could go wrong.
Yeah.
Or regretting what we had done or not done.
And with social media and the internet, being so prevalent nowadays, right? I mean, information is just one click away. How are we going to manage this problem of, worrying and this anxiety pandemic going on and all that?
Choose what you want to spend your time reading. Do I want to read this negative piece of news that will depress me? Or am I going to read about nasi lemak and where I'm going to have my next nasi lemak, which is going to be, really delicious?
But I mean, you see news articles, right? I don't want to mention specific news websites, but they like to list those very controversial, I wouldn't say controversial, but those articles that will hook you straight away, they'll list them first. Monkeypox virus.
Yes.
That's at the top of, certain news articles today.
Yeah, but why would I be worried about monkeypox if I'm not going to be exchanging body fluids with someone else? Right? It's most unlikely that it's going to strike me. Yeah. So I went into a newsroom, and in many newsrooms, they actually have a live feed of what articles are being read.
Oh, cool. Okay.
in real time.
Wow. So if, let's say I go to one news article right now and I'm looking at that
Yes.
article, you can see?
Well, on this screen, they can actually see how many people are reading this article.
Wow.
And what was showing up is the articles that are tragic and articles that are have a fear factor are the ones that attract the most readers. So this is also what drives the media companies to put more of such articles in order to hook you in, because that's the way they sell advertisements.
Okay, and we've talked so much about anxiety, right, the past 15 minutes, but will we ever be able to get rid of anxiety? Right, especially if it's something we've developed since we're young?
We can overcome nervousness or anxiety with practice.
How?
So let's say we are concerned about public speaking.
Okay.
And every time we have to make a presentation or to speak on stage and we get so nervous, we might even freeze up. The only way to overcome it is to do it and keep doing it until you feel comfortable. Your mind doesn't perceive it as something scary.
So like throw yourself in the deep end?
Well, I would say that that's what we call the exposure theory. You expose yourself a little bit, you go on the stage and you speak one line. Then you prepare a speech and you go on the stage and you make the whole speech. And then slowly you increase your exposure. And then after a while, you overcome the fear.
Thing is, right, because youths today, we're afraid, right? We're afraid of the stigma. We're afraid that, having anxiety means it'll affect our careers. We're afraid that, employers may discriminate against us, or we may be judged negatively by society.
So that's what you call layering. You are now anxious about your anxiety. And one of the things that anxiety brings about is the flight response.
Yeah. Running away from the situation, right?
So you find that young people, when they can't cope in a job or they're not happy or they don't feel that they are being validated, they just want to quit. And this has become quite a common phenomenon in young people.
Is that bad though?
Of course, it's not the best thing to do, because feeling anxious is a fleeting experience. You may be feeling anxious now, but when you refocus yourself to do something else, the anxiousness disappears. And if you're in a job, things are not going so well. Well, maybe today is not going so well, maybe tomorrow, but it's not going to be forever.
But you experienced anxiety from your previous job as well, and you quit.
No, I didn't quit. I only quit because I found a better job.
Oh.
My anxiety attack actually came subsequently when something else went wrong in my life.
Right.
So whenever there's just one thing going wrong in our life, we can quite able to cope. Okay. It's when more than one major thing goes wrong, then we find that it's kind of culminated.
Yeah.
And then it kind of overflows.
What would you say to a young person listening to us right now if, let's say, they're experiencing anxiety in a job that they're currently in? Will you tell them to stay in that job forever?
Well, forever is too long a time, but do not quit until you find another job. Okay. So don't be a quitter.
But what if their mental health is really suffering though?
Come and see a counselor. Because the mental well-being suffers only because you're ruminating on it.
Right. Then what about, so all those stories we've heard from people who, they've quit their jobs because of the work environment or because of their bosses or because of their colleagues. Would you say all of them are quitters?
I would say they're not using the opportunity to learn how to develop new skills in coping.
Right.
Because you can never get into an environment and say, oh, everybody's just going to be so nice to you.
Of course.
Because when something doesn't go quite right, do you have the skill to manage it? Do you have the skill to overcome?
Yeah.
And to manage the challenge. If you feel anxious, it's because you haven't developed the skill. And that is a sign that you need to develop that skill. So if we want to go up in the corporate ladder or to be able to do more and better, then we need to learn how to manage. Right. Not just the situation, but also how to manage people. Because how can you go up the corporate ladder if you can't even manage yourself? And then, you can't manage other people.
Yeah.
And every difficult situation, you just want to throw in the towel.
Angie, many people nowadays, they want that quick fix to their problems, right? And when it comes to anxiety, when it comes to stress, most people, right, when they encounter something like that, they would, take a pill, take a drug. In this case, probably antidepressants, right, to help with their anxiety. As a mindfulness advocate yourself, why should people, go for mindfulness instead of all these medication?
Drugs will only fix your symptoms.
And what's wrong with that?
Because anxiety has underlying issues involved.
Okay.
And that has everything to do with how your mind is thinking that is activating the stress reactivity in your body.
Mm-hmm.
So mindfulness is a non-drug intervention that doesn't just relieve the symptoms, but also gets you to face the issues that are triggering the symptoms.
Okay.
So in order to address a symptom, which usually you feel it in your chest, the tightening of your body, is to place your hand on that part of the body and soothe it by maybe rubbing it very gently. And then using the phrase, may I be well and okay, may I be at peace, or may I be well and happy. And to breathe into it, breathing kindness and compassion into that space or that area where your hand is soothing to relax the muscles.
Then what's the difference between doing that as compared to taking an antidepressant?
Because whenever you take drugs, there's always side effects.
Okay.
And this has got no side effects when you're using a mindfulness technique.
That's true.
Yeah. And your liver doesn't have to work extra hard to get rid of some of the toxins that is in the drugs.
Right.
So you're not affecting another part of your body when you're fixing something else. So with mindfulness, it also creates the awareness of how your mind is thinking. What are the habits of the mind that keeps perpetuating this anxiety?
But it comes with a lot of discipline, and it comes with a lot of courage, right? Would you say, to be able to look at your issues directly and, be able to practice the skills needed to, combat those negative thoughts.
So I wouldn't call it so much a discipline, but rather developing a new habit. It's about practicing so that it becomes part of you, and that's what we call embodiment.
Right.
Because how has your system that is resulting in anxiety is because your mind has been practicing a certain way of thinking that has become a habit.
Yeah.
And this habit is what's triggering the anxiety. So now you are retraining the mind to think differently.
Yeah.
To first of all, to stop ruminating on those thoughts that are triggering your emotions.
Okay.
That is fear.
But by stopping those thoughts, isn't that suppressing? And is that helpful in the long run?
There is no suppression because you are pausing your mind as opposed to forcing your mind not to think. You're like, okay, mind, let me now switch to thinking about something else. Or I'm going to meditate on what is really that fear that I am experiencing. Where is it coming from? And you're now able to look at those thoughts with space between you and your thoughts. Your thoughts are not you. And you do not have to let the thoughts control you because they're just thoughts.
Right. That's an interesting way to see it.
Thoughts come and they go. And sometimes there may be a thought that says, hey, go and drink another can of fizzy drink. That's a thought.
Yeah.
But you don't have to act on it.
That's true.
Because that thought creates an urge. Recognize the urge has come out. But if you don't hook on to that thought, you don't dwell on the thought, the urge disappears.
Right.
So when you start to recognize that there is a correlation between your thought, the urge that arises in your body, the sensations your body is feeling, and that you have a choice,
then you're able to
break the habit.
Yeah.
That's why mindfulness has all the scientific evidence to back its efficacy in improving mental well-being. You can't drug yourself out of depression. And you can't just drug yourself out of anxiety. You're only suppressing symptoms.
So you need to go to the root cause.
Go to the root cause.
Okay, before we go, we like to do this at the end of every show. We wrap up our episode by poking fun at today's episode topic. And today, since we're talking about stress and anxiety, Angie, let me give you a riddle.
What is it?
Why should you never date someone who exercises to relieve stress?
To date someone who never...
Why should you never date someone who exercises to relieve stress?
I have no idea, Xuan.
Because they'll run when it gets hard.
You're right.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Of course, Chewonit is a production by Brahm Centre Singapore. Don't forget to follow them on their socials at Brahm Centre Singapore on Facebook and at Brahm Centre SG on Instagram. Next week, it's gonna be an interesting one. Not safe for work, that's for sure. We talk all about sex, from the traditional type to this new thing we call cyber sex, how safe or dangerous it is. We talk about sexual assault, and what we young people really should know about sex. Join us next week.